Now in this video, we want to find the inverse of the following functions, the first, the second, and the third, right? Good. Now here, these are just the steps involved in finding the inverse of certain function. Good. So in our previous videos, I talked about the inverse of the function. I talked about how to find this, right? Using some motivation example. But here I'm just going to use these three examples and then we apply it right away. So good. Replace f of x with y. So the first thing when you're given a function, I said I should replace the function notation like this f of x, alright, with y. Good. Now in case this thing is no more f of x, it's now g of x, like the second question or the third question, which is h of x, you replace it with y. Good. But generally, most times you use f of x, so I just choose to write that one out. Then the next thing is to interchange x and y. So you do the interchange of x and y, and then lastly, you solve the equation for y after interchanging x and y. Good. So let's just use the first question to follow the steps, or let's apply the steps involved in the first question. We have f of x to be 2x minus 1. Great. Now the first step tells us to replace f of x with what? With y. So that would just what we're going to do. We're going to replace this f of x, we put y in its place, right? Good. So y equals, just replacing f of x with y, we are not changing the right hand side, right? Just replacement. Then the next thing tells us that we should interchange the variable x and the variable y. So we do an interchange here. That means in place of x, we'll put y, and in place of y, we're just going to put x. So this tells us that x is equal to 2y minus 1. Right? We are not making x subject of formula. We are just interchanging x and y. Great. So the next thing, it tells us that we should solve the equation for y. So you just try to make y subject of formula of this equation, or make y stand alone on one side of the equation. That will just be by adding 1 to both sides. We'll get x plus 1 is 2y, and then divide both sides by 2. So that tells us that y is x plus 1 over 2. Right? Good. So I made some statement here. Solve for y, and that y is called the f inverse. So if the function was given to be f, then the inverse of that function is given to be f with negative 1 as a power, and then we put it down of x, alright? So the inverse is also written in terms of x, but the only thing is that it reverses the direction of the function. Good. So this new y is called the f inverse of x. That is just it. Great. So this is the inverse of that given function. Right. Let's go over and solve this second question. We have the second question to be g of x is 1 over x plus 1. Alright, good. So to find the inverse of this function, we're just going to follow the steps here. So the first thing is to replace g of x with y. That is, y is 1 over x plus 1. And the next thing we'll do here is to interchange x and y. So in place of x we put y, and in place of y put x. So that gives us x is 1 over y plus 1. Right, good. So we now solve this equation for the value of y. And mind you, this new y is going to be the inverse of the given function, which was g of x. So to solve this for y, let's take the reciprocal of both sides, right? Good. So you use 1 over this and 1 over that. That gives us that 1 over x is y plus 1. Good. You can cross multiply, then divide both sides by x. It will give you the same thing. Then you subtract 1 from both sides. That means that y will now become 1 over x minus 1. Right? Good. So this new right hand side is called the inverse of that given function. So we can denote it as g inverse of x is 1 over x minus 1 is the same thing as 1 minus x over x. Good. So this new function, as I said, is the inverse of that given function. Right, great. I'm going to clean this part of the board, and then we're going to find the inverse of the third function there. We have the third question, h of x is square root of 4 minus x. Good. So the first thing you do is to replace h of x with y. Right? So we're just following the steps. You just have to note the steps without even looking at it. So replace h of x with y. So we're just going to write y to be 4 minus square root of 4 minus x. The next thing is to interchange x and y. Good. So we interchange x and y. This is square root of 4 minus something. So this will give us the square root of 4 minus y, right? Right, good. And then we solve for y, right? So since y is under the square root sign, we can easily square both sides, taking the fact that x is bigger than 0. This is what I'm going to observe here. So I'm going to say square both sides. That gives us x squared is 4 minus y, where x is bigger than 0. Good. Anyway, you know the square root of something can't give us a negative result. So I'm saying x should be bigger than or it can be equal to 0. All right. Okay. So, but that's not really a concern anyway. So here we have x squared equals to 4 minus y. So to make y subject to a formula, we would subtract 4 from both sides and multiply both sides by negative 4. That will give us 4 minus x squared is equal to y. So this new y is called the inverse of the given function, h of x. So I can rewrite it as h inverse of x is 4 minus x squared. Good. Alright, that's better. Okay, thanks for watching and please subscribe to my channel.